Okay. Tonight I'm going to talk about parchment craft, or pergamano, or pergamamo, however you say it. I'll call it parchment craft because that's a broader term. I thought I'd address a question that was talked about last week. Someone wondered if what I do with my cutter to create designs like these. This was a picture of my first parchment craft kit and some of the projects that were in it. It's no longer available, but I thought I'd just tell you a little bit about this craft and let you look at some pictures that I collected while I talk. Parchment craft is a very old art form, using vellum or heavy parchment paper in the creation of greeting cards, wall decorations, boxes, lampshades, household items, gifts, etc., incorporating embossing tools, white ink, oil crayons, and perforating tools like needles. And the designs may start with original or traced line drawings or stamped images, and design patterns are traced in white, gold, or silver ink. Then they're dry embossed from the reverse side with embossing tools, and decorative fills are made in the designs using different combinations of embossing, stippling, and various patterns of tiny pierced holes. Color is added with dorso crayons on the back side of some designs. This creates a light and airy effect like this one. A stronger color effect is achieved by adding color to the front side of the project. The edges are perforated with closely pierced holes and punched out or cut out with tiny craft scissors along the perforations, giving a very lace-like appearance to the completed work. I'm very intrigued by the sheer beauty of completed projects. And my first book that I got on this was called Pergamano Parchment Craft Basic Techniques. I found it very helpful in creating designs, even just learning about the craft itself with the hand tools. I invested a whole lot of money in hand tools. Well, after getting my first cutter over 10 years ago, I became interested in trying to figure out how to transfer this information that I had learned in doing this craft by hand over to the cutter software, because it's very tedious handwork, and with arthritis it's very difficult for me to do it. I don't have the attention span. So this was the first frame that inspired me, and this is the one that I made with the help of Chris from Pazzles, co-founder Pazzles. And I just love the fill designs that you can get and how they can help you. So I have a lot of information about tools that you need and how to do fill patterns, and I think I'll go over some of that if we have any questions, but I'd like to get started just showing you how I would change a basic design or use a basic file and change it into parchment craft. So what I did, I came up with this, I think I'll go to my green screen, this design here. You saw it flipping through when it was on the screen. So what I would like to do is show you how I went about making this. And I think I'll just close this file and start a new one just for the sake of system resources, because these designs are so full of detail and the webinar is so already memory intensive that it could bog down as I'm going through this. Well, I thought I'd just take a very simple shape. And I recommend that as you start doing anything like this, that you start with something very simple. It can get very complex, and frankly, it can take you a lot of time. I've spent 3 days just working on this, getting some ideas down. So if you were going to do just one, it might be faster to do it by hand, I'm not sure, but if you can do it many, many times, or get yourself a collection of fill patterns that you can use to speed up the process, it'll be much better. I was spending time making my own fill patterns. But I'm going to go to the gallery and just get this frame. I just typed in frame for a search and found this one. I thought, well, I can use that. So the first thing I'm going to do with this shape is break it apart using the break icon at the lower toolbar, 7th icon from the left, so that I can work with these pieces separately. What I'll do is I'll select this middle part of it and send it to its own layer. And I really like Make the Cut for its option to use layers, especially for this craft, because we have so many things going on in projects that we really need to be able to work with layers. I was cutting to my view because it does the best job of any of my cutters on doing embossing and piercing, because it has the most pressure of all my machines. So in sending them over to the view software in order to cut, I found out that I really like Make the Cut's layers. Look forward to being able to use it, Make the Cut, with my view. What I'm going to do here is hide the center layer and just make several copies of this outside layer, because there's 3 things I want to do with it. I want to get a cutting line, and I want to get a line for piercing, and I want some lines for embossing. So first thing I'm going to do is go to Edit, Duplicate, Nested Duplicate, and I'm going to make the gap very close at -0.01, and I don't need 15 like it says. I only need 3 right now, all different colors. And I think I'll do it, well, I'll do it by rounded and preview. So that gives me 3 different colors and 3 different sizes. So I will accept that. Now on this layer here, I'm going to right click and select to each its own. So each one will be on its own layer. I'll start with the outside line, which would be the bottom one, and I'm going to call that my cut, because my outside line I'm going to use to cut the completed project. I'm going to hide that. The next one in, I'm going to use that as a pierce. A lot of times the cut isn't even made in traditional parchment craft. They tear along the perforations. I really like the cleaner cut around the outside. So the second layer is going to be pierced. So I'm going to remind myself that I'm going to do piercing on this. And to do the piercing, I'm going to go to the color palette, select line style, create new line style, and move the dash line all the way over to the left so that there's a dash every 100th of an inch. And then the spacing, I want to space them out to 4/100ths of an inch, or about 1 millimeter. And then click OK. So these will be little lines that are pierced. So once I have those, I'm going to hide that layer. And then the third layer will be an embossed line. So I'll select that one. And actually with the third layer, I'm going to select some more embossing for that layer. So if I select it I can come up here to edit, duplicate, nested, and here I want to give it enough fill so that it will fill the, I don't need a lot of fill, I just want a thick line, so maybe 8. Again, I'm going to do a negative or inset shadow negative 0.01 and preview it here. That's about right. So the bright red you see here, this would be the thickness of my embossing around the edge of the flower. I'll accept that, and while I have it on the screen, I'm going to join it so that it's all as one there. You can tell which one you've selected by clicking on the thumbnail, and it'll show up here. The next thing I want to do is work with the center of this flower. So I'm going to hide the outside layers, and I don't think I need this line here, so I'm going to delete it. But what I do want to work with is this part. Now this part I would like to fill in with stippling. I added some stippling to my basic shapes. You can make your own shapes and save them under your shapes. So I made a lot of different patterns. And I saved them to basic shapes, and I named them, I think, embossing line, embossing piercing, a lot of different engraving fills and different styles. I have a diamond pierce, and this is an island filled for engraving. I think that's the one I want. Yeah. So when you want that, you double click, and I'm going to select all of it. I'm going to send it to its own layer first, though, because I've put it on a hidden layer. So you click on the smaller, the 2 green plus icons to send it to its own layer. And I'll hide that other one. And I want to join all these together. These are all separate lines, and they need to be only one image, because I'm going to use Boolean Join to get all of these lines into this thing. But right now they're solid lines. If I zoom in really close, you can see that they're just solid lines. And I like to go to outline so you can actually see the lines that I'm working with. Right now they're solid, and I don't want solid lines. So I'm going to go to the color icon and select line style. And again, create new line style and make them the smallest 0.01, and then make them 0.04. And this is going to be my stippling layer. And I'm going to put here, name it stipple. The difference between stipple and piercing is the depth of the needle as it goes through. When it goes all the way through the paper, it's called piercing. When it just presses against the surface of the paper, it's called stippling. So it creates an indentation. So what I want to do with this is select both of these. I've never tried this with a dash before already. I think I use the solid lines first, but I'll try it with a dash and see. I select both the inside shape and the lines here, and I'm going to use Boolean Join, which is down on the bottom right, and this is a way of kind of subtract welding. It joins 2 shapes together, and whichever one's on the top is the one that's selected, and then you can hit apply. So now I have all of these stippled pieces, and I'm going to check and make sure it's still, I don't see the dashes, but it does work out to be dashes. Just want to make sure. There they are. And I'm going to join them. I guess they're already joined. So I'll show my pieces now. Select them all and type S to stack. And my other flower pieces, I'll show everything, show all. And empty layers go to the trash. So you can see that I've got the outer cut lines, then I've got pierced lines, then embossed lines, and then these stippled lines. Now when I did this, I believe that I made more. I did this whole section in here as embossing. You can do it either way, whatever way you like to do it. I also did some stippling around this shape. Another thing that I did was add a new layer and add a circle to that layer. We'll just type a CI and all categories. Double click on the circle and make it any size you want. And I actually did this as an embossed piece. To emboss it again, to just kind of review, I've got it selected. I'm going to go to duplicate, nested duplicate, and use as many pieces as it takes to fill that circle up. You can keep adding to the count if you need to. I'll take it down a bit. Now if your cutter doesn't have a lot of pressure, you might need to emboss these several times. You see now the center is not filled, so I'll just add a few more at a time until that center is filled. So I've got 14 little circles in there, and I'm going to join those. They're all selected after I accept, join them. Now one thing I found that by embossing this, I do the embossing first and then I do the stippling, and the stippling kind of went over the circle. So what I need to do is remove the stippling that would negate the embossing. So to do that, when you use a Boolean join, you can lose your shape. So I think what I'll do is just get another circle, because I just want a plain circle, I think. I didn't do this, but after I made my project, I felt like I should have done this. So we'll do it now and see how it works. I will send that to its own layer. I'm going to hide the embossed layer. And what I want to do is select, I'll hide the other layers that I don't want. And select both of these, and now I'm going to click on Boolean Join, the 8th icon from the right, and I want the stippling without the circle. Here it is. So when I do that, now I have this part that can be the embossing. So I have embossing in the center, then stippling around the side. I wonder if it's still stippled. Seems that the Boolean join removes that, so I wanted to check to make sure. Okay, so now I have a project all ready to go. I like to change the colors. and I like to keep them in order of the way that I'm going to be doing them. So this one is stippling. This one is embossing. And this one is embossed. This one is pierced, and this one's cut. So if I want to put all the embossing on one layer, I click on the icon, hold the Shift key, and click on the other, send them to their own layer, and I like to join them, especially if I have to export as SVG. Get rid of the extra layers. So now I have emboss, and I have pierce, and I have cut. Oops, where's my stippling? I lost it. So emboss and emboss, hold a Shift key, send to its own layer with the smaller of the two green plus icons, join, hide that, get rid of the extra layers, and call this embossing, E-M-B-O-S-S. So now I have emboss, stipple, pierce, and cut. So when I'm ready to work with these, I'll show all, have my design. If I go to the fill, you can see it's just kind of meaningless colors with all those lines in there. So the first thing I'll do is put my embossing tool and my cutter. I have to use a embossing mat that has that's got a soft cushion on it, and it's sticky, so it'll hold the paper in place. And I'm going to use heavy parchment. It's 100 pound because lightweight vellum is too light and it just kind of tears up. It doesn't have the same nice embossed and pierced effect as you get with the heavier parchment. You can get some parchment paper at Amazon.com. So I used to have a hard time finding it, but you can just search for parchment there and find some nice paper. They have a couple different sizes available. What I use is, I think, 8.5 by 12. That came in my kit, and I still had some to use. When I put the embossing tool in, I did this both with the Pazel's View, and I did it with the Zing. And I didn't have the extra tools for the Zing, so I had to hunt around. I found out my hand tool fit in the Pazel's pen tool, and that fit in the Zing. I used Pazel's regular pen tool, and it worked. Then for the piercing, I used my Pazel's Pro piercing tool fit in the Zing. It's amazing what you can find in your collection that works. Then to do the cutting, I used a regular blade. Once the embossing was done, I closed this and I opened the stipple. And for the stippling, I used the piercing tool, but I cut the pressure in half. For the embossing and the piercing, I had to use a full available pressure on Pazel's. I used 160, which is, no, I used 50, which is the maximum. And on the Zing, I used the maximum of 160. But when I came to the stippling, I cut that pressure down in half. So on the Zing, that was 80, and on the View, it was 25. And what this did was create white dots, tiny little white dots. I like, stippling is supposed to be random. So when I made that grid for stippling. I use the duplicate nested feature on a square and had it fill in all the way. I won't do that now because I think bandwidth will be a problem. It takes a lot of memory to do these. But I like the kind of random look rather than just straight lines or circles, and I also like the way that it kind of formed the corners here to give it a little more character. So after stippling, I removed the piercing tool. No, I left the piercing tool in because now I'm going to do piercing. And for the piercing, it's just going to go around the edge with the piercing tool, but I increased the pressure to maximum again to get a good pierce. I got a lot better pierce on and emboss on Pazel's View because it has 1,000 grams of pressure, whereas the Zing only has 750. And I didn't know if it would make a difference, but using all the same mat and same design, I got a much deeper impression with the View with its greater pressure. So I like the piercing a little bit better. With the piercing, the needle goes all the way through the parchment. Then I removed that without moving the cutting head. Then I was able to put in the regular blade and cut. I had to use it a little deeper than usual because all the sponge didn't hold down the parchment real well after all that embossing. Sometimes embossing actually stretches the paper and creates the white design in the paper. So that's the process that I used to create this. So I'll take a look at the picture here. This is the one I did on the View. So you can see I actually did the embossing for the entire frame of that original design. The stippling is in the middle. And this circle in the middle was embossed first with the outer, but the stippling pushed it down. But you can still see the shadow of the embossing. It's kind of a nice effect. The Zing had a problem with offset, probably because the tools were not all the same size, so I have to play with that for a while. But you see around the edges here, you can see the piercing here, but it was cut off down here at the bottom. So that's the project that I made tonight. Now this is the one that I made the other day with Pazel's View that I posted online with nice deep piercing and embossing, cutting, and I didn't do any stippling on these. These were all pierced pieces. I use the same exact technique. These swirls, I again use Boolean Join to remove those shapes from the frame, and then I was able to keep that emboss effect without pierces going through it most of the time. This design I tried to find again for sale, or the kit that it was in, and it's no longer available, so I can't really share the file, but I thought you'd like to look at it. When I originally made this, I used it for my son's wedding album, and it was a very, very nice touch. And here you see that the piercing fill is more like stippling and but not as close, but it's still a nice effect. We had a question. Someone was asking about where could you go to find some nice, a card that would be nice for.
Hey, Julie. Before you go there was one question specifically about your first part here. Barbara asked, "What mat do you use?" She has done outlines for her parchment, but not embossing or stippling. I think she meant what mat were you using when you did the embossing? You mentioned embossing mat.
Yes, I use the Pazel's embossing mat. The one from Boss Cut for the Gazelle is also nice. It works very well. You could use Fun Foam if you can find the very thin Fun Foam, and if it fits in your machine, whichever machine you're using. It has to be able to fit under the rollers, and some of the Fun Foam's too thick, so I couldn't get it to work. But if you take an old mat and you use some blue painter's tape to tape the Fun Foam to the mat, then you can spray it with some a temporary adhesive so that the paper will stick to it. Then you could make your own custom mat that way. These are some free designs. They come with, I think that I researched, hunted all over the place for some free designs that you could use for Parchment craft. And this site had the most, not only the most free, they're all free, but she includes, you have to sign in, but for example, this one, if you sign in, you can download the pattern, and then you can click on and always save the picture too, because if you need to refer back to the picture, I think the picture is more helpful than even the pattern. And then there's step-by-step instructions on the site for how to do it. So she gives you all the steps, of course, doing it by hand. One of the things you'll notice is that they tell you to trace the pattern. Well, when we're using our cutter software, we don't really have to trace a pattern, except we're going to trace it in the software to get it in. So you can take a look at the pattern. In this instance, the pattern is here, and you'll notice that you've got some lines for tracing, then you've got lines for your piercing, and then you have lines for your background. So you can bring those in. Now the nice thing about her designs being in Word documents is that they come in to make the cut as vectors. So you don't have you don't have to do any tracing. PDF first. So if I go to just print it in my PDF program, then I actually get vectors that can be brought in to make the cut. I think I'll close this other project. Making sure I don't crash anything. And so in order to get that PDF in, I click on PDF and I'll click on the 80. And over here you see import strokes and fills. If you do strokes and fills, you get double lines. If you do strokes only, you'll get single lines. Well, in this particular one you only get one line anyway, because there's no fills here. So then you can just open it and you get your design right and make the cut. If you go to outline, you can see those better. Now when I get these in, I just split them into segments, and sometimes I have a little work to do. On this one I'll break it and get rid of the square around it, make it a little bit smaller, and delete the things at the bottom that I don't need. Then I could select all of these, and those I'm going to put on their own layer and join them and make these into those short little lines. This is for piercing. And the spacing, you can make the spacing whatever you want. I usually go look at the picture, and it looks down here pretty close. So I would probably just leave it at the 4, which is the 1 millimeter, which is pretty standard for Parchment Craft. Oops, I forgot a little design here, and I'll just delete that because it was, no, I don't want to delete it. Undo and make sure I select it all. And again, go to the color box, line style, create new line style, 01 on the dash size, and 04 for the spacing. Oh, I wonder why that's not working. Then I would join all of these. This would be the background card. This would be the embossing. So then I can just join all of these and just use my tool with those. And it doesn't really have to be when I'm going to do fuse and weld. And fuse and weld sometimes will get rid of double lines for you, or to join things together. Not sure what's with this. There are little challenges sometimes. There it goes. So once I get them done, I like to join them so that I can work with them. So we have these lines that would be drawn and these lines that would be pierced. And then I go back to look at that instruction again and see, well, what else did she do? Oh, well, she cut around it. She cut around all the embossed lines over here, and over here she did some, looks like she did some piercing around the edges. So that's where having the square that was there that I deleted comes in. You could probably use this one, Control Shift and drag, and send this to be your pierce lines. And when I do the piercing, I might spread it out a little bit. I might leave it at the 06 for the around the edges. And then since those are joined, I can type S to stack. Make sure they're stacked well. So we have emboss here. If you need to, you could go over these 3 times to make sure that you get them all, select all the lines and get them nice and deep. If you wanted to, you could thicken them, but you also want to create some cutting lines. So this is where I would select these, and I would do a shadow, and I need the outside lines so I can cut them, and I probably would do a 0.02 if I'm going to cut around those lines. And then I need to look at this a little closer and see if I need to add shadows around these inside lines. But what I want is to have some shadows inside of these if I want to cut them out. So maybe I need to do an inset shadow. To do inset, you do a minus. And it's not really letting me do it. So I'd have to look at this a little bit more. I didn't look at it earlier. Just kind of picked it at random. But the designs here that she has do come in nicely. Another option is to take a capture of the picture and then do a trace. So if I right click and copy image and I bring it in to make the cut, I can click on the pixel trace at the top and just paste what I copied. I'm going to use Control to drag around just this part of the design, and I would get the other image that doesn't have the text on it and apply changes there. And maybe just trace the white. If I need to, I can increase the threshold a little to make sure I get nice clean lines and import. And then I have some cutting lines that I could use in conjunction with these over here. Have to resize them appropriately. Get rid of the excess here. And the size may not match this, but then I can work with this file as it has cutting lines already, and I can create shadows. So either way, I'd probably work with one or the other, but not combine them. So we had another question about are there any elegant files that are, things that we could do for a sympathy card. And as I was looking through some of these, I thought many of these would be so lovely as sympathy cards. They're just very soothing and comforting, not loud, but so if you wanted to do something like this, these are all free. Again, there's some work involved in converting the files. Sometimes it's just easier to rebuild the file with your basic shapes. So what I did was create a bunch of fills. Let me see. It takes a lot of time to do these, but when you get a pattern book or a pattern, they'll designate which fill goes with which part of the design. As you saw in that Victorian lady, let's see if I can find her picture here. You see each part of this design, you can use coloring book pages, you can use line art, you can use digital stamps. The idea is that each little part has a different fill, and your pattern should give you a picture like this one of what the fill pattern should look like. And when they give you a pattern, it's true to life size, so you could actually import that or just make your own. I found that tracing this is okay, but it's a lot more efficient for me just to make my own patterns to use. So that's what I did here. I was playing with the different designs that were called for in the patterns in my book so that I could do some of those designs. So then I worked with the small shapes, and I did the embossing on the circles, the fills, so that if you just did a plain circle without the duplicate nested inserts, you would just get a line for a circle. But if you want a little bubble type effect, then you have to do the duplicate. So by creating these different sample fills, I can then duplicate these to make a whole design. And some of the cuts that are common are sometimes these cross cuts. They tell you to take scissors out, get some scissors and cut between the dots to create a zigzag kind of design. Well, I don't need to get out my scissors. I don't need to use scissors to create this little idea. If I do this, or let's say that I take this X here and resize it. I should zoom in a little more. is a little bit too tall. If I click Control Shift and drag, oops. Can't get it. It does that, just send it to its own layer to hide it. Now I hold Control Shift, drag, and I can get two crosses right on top of each other. And now I can weld those together using the weld icon. Now weld just gets rid of the overlapping lines. So I now don't have any lines in between. So let me undo that so you can see. Right now they're overlapping. When you have the fill on, you can't really tell that there's lines there, but there are. So you need to select them and weld them to get rid of those center lines. So now we have a welded design that instead of now making little circles like the pattern calls for, we can create this, and we don't have to use scissors to create that little V. So as I was working with these different designs, fill patterns, I created the common ones that you will see in some of the designs. Is the teardrop, and this was the one that you might use for five dots. There's some here that have embossed. A lot of times they will emboss between the dots, like here, where they have a diamond shape, and then they tell you to emboss in between these. So the X's would be cut out and the circles would be embossed. So when you're designing these, you have to make sure that you put the embossed portion of the design on its own layer and put the cut pieces, I like to join them and put them on their own layer. They're really hard to grab if you do them out of order. So this one, it has a lot of circles. They're all joined together. So I can select just those circles, and then I can duplicate them and put them wherever I need them to be in the design. So do we have any more questions?
No, Barbara just made a comment that she has the Pazzles mat that you talked about, so she'll try to using that. And she did send me a design via email, but I don't have it on this machine to show her. But that was it. That was more of a comment than a question. And that was it.
There's a lot more I could cover, but I didn't want to take up the whole program tonight.
I think you gave us a good example.
I printed up a document with hints and tips about which tools, which mats, which blades, and the machine settings and all, and I'll post it at MTC Toots also with links that I found where you can get free patterns. There are some really nice patterns available for sale, but it takes a lot of work to convert most of them. You have to really want the design, but some of these are really, they're worth it. Some beautiful designs. So if you're willing to go to the trouble of creating, you'll have it for many of the same project for different people. So, and again, these don't have to be just cards. It can be household items, picture frames. These effects are just lovely. I was looking at some of these that I showed you at the beginning. Like this one doesn't look like much until you see it up close. How these embossed lines are a diamond grid, and then these little circles here are made up. Usually they use a scallop tool to poke 4 holes on the upper part of the circle and 4 holes at the bottom, and then they have tools that have 2 needles. So you're punching these. and then these are embossal circles. Well, all of this would take a little bit of work, not a little bit, major work to create the file, but it's so very pretty, and the effect is stunning. So it's worth the time if you need one of these projects. Start with something simple like we did today, because you can really get buried in some of the complexity of all of these very intricate details, but each little detail makes for a better project. So did I answer the question about the welding?
Yeah, you probably did, and if not, we'll cover it more. Barbara did ask another question. She said, stippling and embossing is done on one side and piercing is done on the other. Do you turn the paper over?
Everything that we're doing with the cutter is done from the back side of the paper. So embossing is actually on the cutter. Debossing, we're debossing, so we're pressing a line down. The embossed side is face down. Stippling also, it's pressing down, so when you turn the paper over, you have that stippled effect. Now, I don't know if they do stippling the opposite way, but no, I leave everything on my embossing mat, and I do everything from the back side. So if stippling is supposed to go the other way, well, it looks mighty fine to me the way it is, and I don't think I would change it. But the piercing, they tell you could do from either side depending on the look that you want. So sometimes we're a little limited in getting some of the nice effects you can get with the various different embossing tools that they have by hand, but you're not limited to having to do all of that on the machine. You can do some handwork from your cut design. I just appreciate the option to be able to let my machine do the most of the work. Now, this little design that we did tonight actually took the Zing 35 minutes to pierce, took the Pazel's View 30 minutes, just that little design. So we can get into some real issues with computer memory with these. I'll show you some of these different pages here if I can. These are the same designs multiplied to give you a full background so that you can fill any piece. So here's one design. Here's another. I took another one of the circle inside the diamond grid. And this one is another pattern from my book, but again, multiplied. Well, by the time you multiply all of these little circles here, you are really taxing your system. So I recommend that you shut down everything when you're working on these, because it goes at a snail's pace trying to process all of these. Here's another with just, this has got a pierce in the middle of the embossed circle. It's got a five-point design with embossed centers. This one is the stippling that we used tonight. This is a border, very complex border with a kind of a teardrop shape that's been resized and relocated. Some of the instructions say make some of these little dots into ovals. I didn't do that, but that's a nice effect too. And then I did a card, just a simple card using one of these effects with 5 pierced, a set of 5, and then the emboss in the middle, and just multiply them to make the front of a card. And you could do this in layers. You could put another kind of embossed image over that if you want, or just leave it simple. Another one that I did was a card topper using this. Again, making a white border around the edges with embossing, and then all of the inner detail is either embossed or pierced. And then around the edges there's some more embossing. But my computer went so slow, even without being on the webinar, trying to do these. So that's why I'm not really demonstrating how to do those, but I'm just showing you these. Because when you ungroup these, you end up with lots and lots and lots of little details. So if you're making background fills, I do recommend that you keep them kind of small. If you need them bigger, you can always duplicate it for a bigger design, or you could do something like this and stretch it out a little bit, and it still works. So any more questions?
There are no more questions at this time. No, wait, someone just came in.
Yes.
It says, okay, Julie, before you go, where did you say to get the aluminum from last week?
Oh, aluminum. Somebody posted a site where they get aluminum, and somebody else was going to try to get some aluminum flashing. I got mine from a craft store, a local craft store, Artco. I recommend that you not use anything heavier than 36 gauge. Let me see if in my journal I can find aluminum or
Yeah, she said that Home Depot didn't have any where she looked.
Oh, okay. Amy said that aluminum flashing and rolls with roofing supplies from any large hardware store will emboss nicely with an embossing folder. I don't know if it would be lightweight enough in order to do with our cutters, though. Let's see. Aluminum supplier, whimsy.com. That's for aluminum foil supplier. Heat transfer foil, texascraft.com. So those are the main links that I found. I don't know if I put some links in. I don't think I did yet. I usually like to add those kind of links in MTC Toots in the links section, but I don't think I've done that yet. I haven't ordered any from anywhere. I just saw this metal in a store and thought, I'm going to buy a little bit of everything they have and just try it, and it's been sitting around in my stash. So some of it was too heavy. Actually, 36 gauge brass and 36 gauge, what's the other one that they have? Copper. Those did not cut on any of my cutters. They're too dense. I don't know if they were heated or what, but I could barely emboss them in my Big Shot with embossing folders, or no, even within my fuse, with the dies that come with the fuse would not cut. So, but 36 gauge aluminum cut very, very well. So I'm very happy with that. So you might have to check your, do a search. Now somebody sent me some, but it was heavier. And I can't remember the site where they got it.
And then Leslie asked, Julie, will you be doing any YouTube videos on this?
On this Parchment craft?
I'm assuming that's what she's talking about.
For YouTube, I might put this on YouTube. Oh, you want to see me actually doing it? I'm not very good with the camera showing the process. But also, it's so very tedious that if you look through YouTube, you'll find some, I found a couple videos that were helpful. So just under YouTube, search for Parchment Craft, and you can see some basic instruction for doing it by hand. But it could take several webinars just to go over the process, but I would need to, or not webinars, but videos to really go into depth and to answer questions. So if you have a specific question that I didn't answer this time, let me know, and I can try to address it maybe in shorter videos. I've never seen anybody converting these files on a video or even on a webinar. So this is new territory. What I thought I would do is give you some homework and ask you to create some pieces. Take a look at the different designs that are free and notice the little grids or the little fill ideas that they tell you to do in a part of a design, and create your own. So if you will post a design that you've converted to a cutting file, if it was free for personal use only, then if you'll send it to me, then I will send you my collection of all of these designs here. But they were a lot of work. This is 3 days of work, and I'm not real eager just to give it away. But I would trade with you. So if you can do some work on creating some designs that work for you, take a picture of it, of your project. It doesn't have to be somebody else's design, but it could be a free coloring page, or it could be, you can Google for line art, any digital stamps, and anything that's free we could share. It would be nice to be able to share the burden, kind of like we did with the fonts when we were fixing the fonts. If we get more people working on creating some parchment craft type designs, or at least converting them to cutter use, then we could have a collection that would be a lot of fun, and everybody wouldn't have to do all the work themselves. So if you're interested, create something, send it to me by email, and I will send you back this whole collection of things that took me 3 days working full-time to do.